Rack and roll, shadows of Centris. In the end, a bus was paid for. They bought tickets in advance, and Amadi wove some illusions, and suddenly they were three men of random races. Armor still up, though. The Cretan had decided to have some fun with it with himself as an Apuk, ghostly pale and with hair so dark it seemed to drink in the light. He had apparently taken some inspiration from Koa's wife, and the man was now a chocolate-brown Lirak with a deep tan off-color around the cheeks and chest. Finally, he had earned a long, level look from Reggie, after making the man look like a grease-smeared rabbi's with an oversized bobtail sticking to him like a pom-pom tucked into his belt. They're looking for human men, not a Lirak, Apuk, and rabbis. If they're looking for humans specifically, possibly Tret. Our armor and communicators are giving out distinct signals, to say nothing of the shield emitters. If that's what they're looking for, then they're going to find us even through this. Reggie remarks, noting that with the way the illusion is animated, he simply has his off two arms fiddling with some small device. A device which is admittedly fascinating and takes some effort to not simply study the part that Amadi no doubt copied from the guts of a machine he'd stuck his head into somewhere. Maybe something that will excuse why we smell like metal and clank somewhat when we walk, Koa asks, and Amadi sighs in frustration. No appreciation for artists, not here and not at home. He gripes, and there's a sort of blink. All three men are suddenly Platin men in generic rent-a-cop uniforms with open shield emitters pierced into the leathery plates of their hide and visibly active. Gorgeous guards, LTD? Reggie demands. Asking either of you to act like women, even an alien women, is asking the world to start spinning the other way. So how about you act like you're embarrassed to be here and eager to get home? Amadi replies with a smile that is deliberately impish both under his helmet and on the face of the illusion. You know, someday someone is just going to lose their shit at one of the cracks you make, and you're going to have to start dodging swings. Reggie grumps before going quiet for the rest of the wait. Amadi, not one wanting to be bored, pulled out his communicator and began to read through it. His awareness of the surrounding axiom allowed him to understand when the silent was peering around him to see what he was reading, and he shifted the screen on the device accommodatingly. However, the accommodation was either offensive or the subject on screen, the local rag's latest rumors on humanity weren't to the man's interest, and he fades back and away, which was a shame. It was trying to track back the Dauntless to a massive conspiracy of 100,000 cloning operations working in tandem to get things done, which would be way overkill. There are only about 5,000 people on the ship total. What else were they trying to clone? Bacterial life? Maybe. When the bus arrives, all three men pile on, and there's a tap on the armor from the silent to let them know that he snuck on with ease. They garner a lot of attention, which leads to Koa furiously texting at Amadi to maybe think things through a bit more next time, especially when several women start asking after Gorgeous Guards LTD. "Ma'am, please, we're exhausted and just want to go home," Reggie says, letting his frustration and something older and very, very worn down spill out in his tone. It's enough to get people to flinch back a bit, and Koa makes a mental note to try and talk to the man, or at least make sure he's still going to his therapist. The bus seems to be working fine until all of a sudden there's a turn to the left out of nowhere. The shift is so violent that several women are thrown from their seats, and a furious Feely stands up and stalks to the driver's pod. She hammers on the side a few times and demands to see who thinks flying like that is even slightly acceptable. There's no response, and she rips open the doorway before screeching in horror, "She's got a bomb!" The Feely screams, and all three men race down the bus. There's a blast followed by a massive burst of wind as something detonates, and there's the blurring of someone jumping out the side and flying away. "Oh fuck, that's a lot of boom," Reggie remarks as he sees the device that's been clasped onto the controls of the bus. "Shields off. If we get closer to it with them on, we could set it off. Their shields deactivate and Amadi lets the illusion drop. The device has numerous cylinders implanted into the sides and a central shaft. He immediately starts digging through his pockets and pulls out some small tools. I don't have the right tools for this, so I'm gonna need you guys to grab things at my command. Reggie sits in the driver's seat and quickly presses a few buttons to engage an emergency autopilot. He breathes a sigh of relief as the bus slows and he busies himself with dismantling the weapon. There are a few moments where he seems to make no progress before he taps one of the 6 cylinders. Rip it off. Each one adds to the bomb's power. This one is safe for now. Reggie commands as Koa reaches in and tears off the part of the bomb. Crush that thing's top and bottom. Otherwise, it'll suck in atmosphere and convert it to plasma. There's a crunching sound as Koa's strong hands are infused with a touch of axiom and close with more force than a pneumatic press. Our bomber is watching us, Amadi says, looking out the window and seeing a dark figure flying after the bus. Give her something to watch. I want her openly questioning what planet she's on. Koa answers and Amadi nods. Let's see what she thinks of Mars, he says, and his very presence is suddenly shimmering as if under a haze. Every woman on the bus, already staring, start going bug-eyed at the man's presence as they feel the sheer amount of power he's toying with. Koa, I need you hands again, Reggie says, and the large man reaches in and grabs the indicated cylinder. Gonna need to pull. I couldn't completely loosen it. There's the sound of metal snapping as Koa rips out the next portion of the bomb's payload. Crush it. Crush it. Reggie confirms Koa's question as he works on the next one. There's a scream of agony and he glances out the hole in the side of the bus. The broken body of the bomber falls through the air, trailing blood. Should have paid attention to traffic, Amadi notes disdainfully. I hope the person that hit the bitch wasn't hurt themselves. Reggie notes absently. He's pulled out a K-bar to help lever things around as the more delicate tools loosen screws, dislodge wires, and disrupt axiom flows. Give it a rip and crush, big man. Koa's strong fingers wrap around the partially pried out cylinder and tears it out completely to free up the knife, which is then rammed into another part of the deadly device to force it open a little more so that he can wreak real havoc with the more delicate instruments. Are there any surprises you see coming up? Koa asks, and Reggie grunts as he twists the knife as he dislodges things with a pair of needle-nose pliers. I think the central portion has a bit of boom to it too. It will completely break the controls even if we get the rest of the payload off this thing. At that point, the autopilot dies and we start falling. Not to mention the shrapnel could severely hurt or even kill some of the girls here. How did they know we're on this bus? Koa asks, and Amadi chuckles. Our enemies are a splinter faction of the organization that helped us. Stands to reason they're infiltrated, or at least being spied on. Anything I can do there, Reg? He asks and is handed a pair of tiny screwdrivers. Hold those, Reggie says as something snaps inside the bomb and he tosses something to the side with the pliers. Koa, we got some crushing for you. Koa takes the partially dislodged plasma cylinder before crumpling it like an empty beer can. Just 2 more of those. Do you think you can get the central component disarmed too? Maybe? I don't know if it's on a timer, proximity, or a remote, but I've exposed a couple pieces keeping it on the brace. Reggie answers, swapping his pliers and knife out for the screwdrivers and quickly unzipping part of the device. How much boom is left? Enough to trash the whole front of the bus. This thing works with the central part going off to then trigger the other 6. If it's just the ignition charge, then my armor gets some scorch marks and the controls get fucked, but that's manageable compared to the entire bus being reduced to slag and burnt charcoal. Lovely. Keep at it. Koa orders him as Reggie swaps out the screwdrivers for the pliers and levers the knife in to pry apart part of the bomb again, to dislodge the internal components more fully. "Yeah, I'm getting more familiar with this thing as I go," Reggie remarks, even as several wires are torn out entirely and he shoves the pliers back in to rip out more guts from the device. "Where's the autopilot taking us?" Amadi asks, as the bus takes an automatic turn. "No idea," Reggie replies. "I'm a little distracted. Rip and tear, big man." Koa reaches in and tears out the next cylinder before crushing it as he had the others. "We're heading to Mulgar Spire," one of the women in the bus says out loud. "What's wrong with Mulgar Spire?" "Only one of the worst police response times on all of Centris," someone snaps. "Fuck, the whole bus is a trap. It goes boom and we're dead. We disable the boom and we have enough time wasted to end up in a trap. We jump out and we're in the air with the traffic where they can send someone to screw with us." Amadi mutters. "Right. Well, I'll deal with this trap and you figure out something am," Reggie remarks as he once again swaps the screwdrivers for the pliers, even as he pries up the last major cylinder. He goes at it both sides and then rips it out himself and passes it to Koa. "Crush it." "Think you can pull it apart?" Koa asks Reggie as he starts quickly pulling at bolts and rivets both. "Maybe. I don't have the proper tools for this, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of bullshit here," Reggie replies before he suddenly goes still. "Shields!" All three men activate their shields just before white-hot fire blasts over them. The roar of the flame is exceeded only by the screaming of the other passengers. Thankfully, the shields hold, and Koa's large form in the doorway, coupled with the open hole in the side of the bus, force the sheer roiling heat into the opposite direction and vent things out the side. Before the heat can clear, the bus slams into the floor of Mulgar Spire, and Reggie is nearly bounced out, but Amadi's arm snaps out and grabs him by the shoulder. The bus tilts over and slams onto its side. The screams increase and all three men fall somewhat, Reggie landing on top the clothing concealing their armor, either burnt to ashes or reduced to smoldering rags. "My armor held up," Reggie says in a stunned tone, not quite believing it himself. "That was the thing disarmed?" Amadi demands. "Yay, each one of the cylinders was 3 times that payload," Reggie says, still stunned. Koa sits up and both other men are moved into a more upright position as he does so. "Silent status?" Koa asks as he slowly rises to his feet. The man in the low-profile bodysuit staggers upright, clearly dazed and uncertain. Thankfully, he was a few seats past where the 3 men were. The heat had likely been somewhat uncomfortable but not damaging. He gets a little hand wave from side to side. "Control, this is bait, I repeat. This is bait. Our return home has been intercepted and we're in enemy territory. Pick up, please," Koa says into his comm. Thankfully, the blast hadn't damaged the tiny on the outside compartments they were storing their weapons and munitions in, but it had stripped them of any level of illusion that they were out and about for anything less than a war. Their gleaming pale blue armor was now thoroughly smudged, but still ready for battle. "We've been watching. We already have a squadron en route. ETA 10 minutes. Keep casualties as low as reasonable. Stay alive, soldiers," Control replies. "Confirmed," Koa says, even as Reggie rises up, already reaching for the components of and assembling his rifle. The technician climbs upwards without a word and looks through the scope. There's a bang and he drops down to avoid a massive laser cannon blast. "We've got power armor," he half shouts. Silent instantly snaps to attention at that. "Who the fuck brings power armor to an ambush?" Amadi demands. "These guys, apparently. They really want us dead," Reggie says, even as the laser cannon eats at part of the bus above him. If he were still trying to take a shot, that would have burnt clean through him. "Fucking why? Why so much effort for 3 schmucks?" Koa asks, even as he pulls out his massive machine gun. "Let's open that can and ask them," Reggie replies as he starts to pour Axiom into his rifle. Surrender, vile humans. You're surrounded. You're outnumbered. You're outgunned. But not outmatched, Amadi spits. And not out of our league. Koa agrees, grinning under his helmet despite himself. There's a slap on the back of a seat and Silent points right at him. He jerks the finger at him a few times, clearly amused, and climbs up before gesturing at the passengers to stay down. He heads to the back of the bus and boots the door open, holds a finger to his lips and vanishes. "Let's give him some cover, lads," Reggie says, and there's a vicious and almost eager edge to his voice.